Hey, I'm Julie Rose. Welcome to Love What You Love. I'm an author, creator, and enthusiast, and I've always been fascinated by the things that people are super into, because they're always a unique expression of curiosity and joy and wonder. So every other week, I'll introduce you to another fascinating human who's into really interesting stuff. Welcome back, or welcome. This podcast exists to offer a little bit of wonder and joy to hopefully help you get through the challenges of being human in this world. It has been so fun to hear from people who were inspired to try new things after hearing the first few episodes. What's been especially cool is hearing from people that didn't think they'd be interested in a topic, and then they listened and they realized, wow, that person was super fascinating. People are amazing. I've been having so much fun doing the show, and the feedback's been super positive, so I'm doing something kind of scary, given that I have a full-time job. I'm going to a weekly schedule. That's right, you'll be getting all manner of joy and love directly in your ear holes every Tuesday. Yay! And yikes! If you'd like to support the podcast, consider subscribing or leaving a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. Or share the podcast on social media. Or just beam me your positive vibes as I move to this new format. It all helps. Also, I'm now including links to my guests' favorite nonprofits, so check out today's show notes for that. And don't forget to go back and check out the notes for episodes 1 through 7 for links to some incredible organizations doing really important work in our communities. Okay, after that whirlwind, let's get a little more mellow. Emma Lefebvre is like your favorite elementary school teacher, in the very best way. Her popular YouTube channel focuses on tutorials for creating watercolors, but it's really so much more. She's mellow, she's patient, she's incredibly encouraging, and gives you the confidence to just go for it. So let's find out why Emma loves watercolors, and why you might learn to love them too. Hello, Emma. Thank you so much for joining me.
Nice to be here.
I'm so excited to have you here. So I found you on YouTube last year, and you do primarily watercolor tutorials on your channel. It's very cool. And how in earth did you come to do that?
It honestly, like the tutorials in general or just watercolor?
Both. Yeah. Both? I want to hear both. I want to hear about both.
Okay, so I've been into art my whole life. Like since I was a kid, I was one of those kids in class that would be doodling instead of listening to the teacher, which was not a good thing. But I've just been into art my whole life. And I went to an arts high school. I went there for visual arts, and I actually ended up hating it. The visual arts part. And I took an interest into performing arts. So I did that for a very long time. I didn't like the structure of being told what to do with art. And it just kind of ruined it for me for a while. And then, I went into a totally different path. I started teaching kindergarten and I was working with kids, but I primarily loved teaching them art. So I had been doing that for about 6 years. And then about 2016, I was going through a pretty rough depression, and I'm pretty open with my mental health. And, I've struggled with anxiety and depression, and I went into Michael's, and art stores have always been like a calming place for me to be. And so I went there and I picked up one of those really, really cheap artist loft palettes that are like super chalky and like for kids, and some brushes, and I brought them home and I just started painting flowers and like watercolor backgrounds. I was looking on Instagram, and there's such a great art community on there. And I was just watching what they were doing, and I just, kind of fell in love, and it became a type of therapy for me. And I was just writing really positive quotes and just trying to bring myself out of this dark place that I was in. And it ended up being something that I was doing every single day for at least 2 years.
Wow.
Yeah. And I started an Instagram account of just my art stuff, and I started posting. And I remember when I got my first 100 followers, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so important. And I felt so cool. And I would enter those little lettering challenges where you follow a prompt every day. And I remember someone reposted my work, and I felt like I was on cloud nine, and I was a part of this art community that was just so incredible and so positive that I just kept up with it. And then I just literally practiced every single day, and I fell in love with florals. And I found this other artist on Instagram, Stephanie Fehrenbach, and she was doing a watercolor workshop. And it was also teamed up with Becca Cordes from Happy Ever Crafter, and she's a calligrapher. And it was like a half and half class. And I was like, you know what? It was like a couple $100s. And I was like, you know what? It was my birthday. And I went and I was like, I'm going to treat myself. And I went and I fell in love. And I just started painting flowers from then on and kept posting. And then eventually, I think 2016, around like at the end of the year, I decided that I wanted to post a tutorial on something that I did not know how to do. And it didn't go anywhere for like a good 2 years. And then once I went on mat leave with my son, I was pregnant with my son, I started posting a bit more often on YouTube. And then it kind of took off. Like I didn't do it regularly. And I had plans to, but I was,
pregnant.
not good at that. Yeah, I was pregnant. And then my husband was also a YouTuber at the time. And he worked for a tech company reviewing tech reviews. And so he linked up my account to his, and he had left that job and he still had money coming in and he didn't understand why. And he looked at it and he's like, oh my God, Em, you're the one that's bringing in money. And I'm like, what? Like I can make money off of this? And he's like, we got to get you to do this more often. So he's like, start posting, a couple times a week. And this can be your income. Like I didn't really have plans on going back to teaching. I wanted to be home with my son, and we were so blessed that we were in a position that I could be a stay-at-home mom. And I started posting 2 to 3 times a week, and it just kind of exploded. And I still to this day have no idea how that even happened. It blows my mind that people want to watch me paint.
I think I mentioned to you before we started that I've been a subscriber for a little while. And it's so soothing, and you make it very, you're very authentic. You make it very like, it's okay if you screw up. It's okay if it's not perfect. The point is not to be perfect. The point is to express yourself.
Yeah. Just enjoy it. And that's what I love about watercolor too, is that it's such a relaxing medium and it's forgiving and you don't have to be perfect. And that's also why I don't do hyperrealism. That stressed me out. I really love loose things where you can kind of just play and just enjoy it. And it's more about the process than getting to that end result of what you want. And I have to remind my followers a lot, they're like, well, why doesn't my painting look like yours? And I'm like, 1, I've been doing this for a few years. And then 2, before I filmed this tutorial, I probably did this 10 times before I shot it. Right? And I will be completely honest and tell you that I have drawn and painted things right before this that did not turn out. And sometimes it doesn't even turn out in my videos. And I'm like, it's fine.
Right.
It really doesn't matter. You know what I mean? Right. Just create something that makes you happy.
Yeah.
There's no pressure.
Exactly. Now, so when you were at your arts high school, was there a specific track?
No, I think we dabbled in everything, but I just remember there being a project mural of something that represented you. And I had laid it all out and my teacher said, no. And I'm like, what do you mean? No, this is my life. This is my project. And she just was very specific about how she wanted it. And I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. And I was just so turned off. There was I don't know. It was very specific and you were being graded on something. And I think that's also why I didn't enjoy it, because you were getting a mark at the end of it. And how can you mark someone's art? You know what I mean? I'm not going to say anyone is better than anybody else or this deserves an A and this deserves a C. Every stage of the process of getting to where you want to be deserves an A, because, from every mistake, you learn something and you get better. I have so many people that say, I bought that expensive Arches watercolor paper, but I don't want to use it because I don't want to waste it. I'm like, you don't waste by trying, because with every painting, you learn something new. There's never a waste. I mean, yes, I do throw out some of my artwork that I'm like, this is garbage. We all have those moments. I don't create everything and I don't love everything that I create, right? But, I still learn from those things.
Do you feel like, you said you were doing watercolor before you had your son. Do you feel like your art has changed since he came along?
I think, no, I don't know. It's always been kind of the same, just relaxing, just to paint you paint to paint, just to enjoy it and love it. And I enjoy it, I think, a bit more now just because that is my time alone. You know what I mean? It's my time away, and it's kind of given me a different purpose rather than just being, a mom. And I love it, but trying to also find who I was outside of being someone else's caregiver was so important. It's kind of become more of a passion of mine and more of a fuel to keep creating.
In terms of like when you were growing up, did you grow up in besides the art high school, did you grow up in a pretty art-centric family?
No.
Really? Really?
Not really. No. Well, I grew up with just my mom. It was just me and her. And she will be the first one to tell you she is not an artist, but she definitely, she always accepted that that's something I really love to do. And she didn't push me in that direction, but she supported it. She saw that I loved to draw. So she would buy me sketchbooks and buy me markers. She never guided me like, you should try this or this. She just kind of gave me all the materials and was like, here you go. And I didn't really have anybody else in my life who was very artistic at all. It's just something I would go home after school every day and watch TV and just draw in my sketchbook. And it was just something I always did. I just loved drawing. And I didn't even really get into watercolor until like a few years ago. Like I had played with it before. I'd played with it like with my kindergarten kids, like, those big chalky cake pans, like that's the extent of watercolor that I had before.
Do you feel like the skills you learned to be a kindergarten teacher have transferred into the skills to do tutorials?
100%. And I think I mentioned this in one of my live videos before that I don't mean this to be like condescending. I hope no one took it that way, but like I treat everyone like they're a kindergarten kid, but not in a way like where I treat you like you're a little child, but just that you're absolutely a beginner, and I believe that anyone from the age of 3 and up can do it. You know what I mean? I just say, you just want to learn the basics. And I would teach my kindergarten kids very similar to how I teach adults, because I don't treat them like kids. I treat them like, like everything, if you break it down, is actually so simple. Everything is made up of shapes and lines and color. And if you have that basic, you could do anything. So I think teaching kids for sure was a huge benefit to starting my YouTube channel, because I think what people enjoy about my tutorials is that I can make it as simple as possible without overwhelming you. And I got some of the best results out of my kindergarten kids. Like they were like 3 and 4. And when you have kids at that age, a lot of what you hear is, I can't do it. I'm like, no, but you can. Just because your circle doesn't look like my circle doesn't mean it's wrong. That's your kind of circle. And, we're going to keep building off of that. And I would create portfolios every year for them and have their beginning work and their end work. And the process, just watching them grow, was incredible. But it's because you give them that, that positive feedback and that encouragement and be like, yeah, you can do this. And I try and do the same thing with my tutorials. And, your beginning work's not going to look like mine, but also my beginning work didn't look like mine. You know what I mean? Like I did a sketchbook tour, I think, for one of my videos of some of my stuff that I first started out with. And I was like, oh my goodness, like we're all beginners at some point. No one comes out of the womb. Well, maybe some people do when they're like super, super talented. Right. But I'm a firm believer on you can be taught this. It's not a natural ability.
It's like with anything that you want to get good at, you have to, there might be some talent inherent, but you have to practice. You have to keep practicing.
For sure. And I practiced every day for years. And it wasn't, I have to practice to get better. It was, I enjoy this, so I'm going to do this every day. And then you naturally just get better.
Do you see your son showing any interest?
I am hoping for it, and I am trying to push it only because I'm like, let's do something together. Yeah. But he's still so young. He's going to be 2 next month. And he comes into my office. He goes, Mama, office? And he goes through all my paints. And he likes my paintbrushes. He likes using them as drumsticks a bit more. And our painting sessions have increased from like 2 minutes to about 7 minutes, which is wonderful. But I don't know. His interests are all over the place right now. He's just a ball of energy and can't sit still for more than 5 minutes. So who knows? I would love it if he was into art, but I have no idea.
So being an artist and being a YouTuber can be, it's not isolating, but you're by yourself a lot.
Yes.
So I guess a couple of questions. One, how do you, are you okay with that? And then two, do you find ways to do art with other people?
So one of my major goals when all of this quarantine is over, and it was before, was to teach in-person workshops because I am a stay-at-home mom and because my primary job is doing YouTube tutorials. I'm extremely isolated and I'm an introvert, so it's not too bad. But I do get that itch. Like I miss my coworkers. I miss talking to adults that can string together more words than my son can. Right. And that's my biggest thing is like, please talk adult to me. I can't do the 2-word sentences anymore. So I am itching to be around people and teach in person. That is one of my major goals because and it's funny because I don't have many friends who are into painting. I don't have really any artist friends. So I'm just like, someone please share this passion with me. I just want to talk to someone about paper and color.
Right.
And I tried to make my husband paint with me and he did it, but he was not having any of it. So
I showed my husband some of your tutorials and, we tried to sit down and do art together and he got so frustrated because it wasn't perfect.
Yeah, that's my husband too. He's like, well, this isn't as good as yours. So why am I trying? I'm like, just guys, it's fun. Don't you? He's like, no. He's also like a tech guy. He likes building computers and that kind of stuff. So he's like, no, but I am definitely itching to teach in person and just talk to people who have the same passion as I do because I'm so passionate about it and I could talk about it for hours and not everyone around me wants to listen to it. So yes, I would love to do that in-person stuff.
So when you're painting, when you sit, not to do a tutorial, but just to sit down and paint, kind of what gets you into the flow feeling?
I don't know. It has to be a nice day outside. I will say that. Like my office has like 3 pretty decent sized windows. And if it's gross out, I have no motivation. It's weird. I definitely deal with a lot of like seasonal depression too. Winter was very hard, but I find like spring and like sunshine, just like that kind of just puts me in the mood to paint and just relax. I'll have like either a TV show on my computer or music. And I just like to paint, but I'll tell you that since I've done their tutorials, I haven't actually taken as much time to just paint for leisure anymore because I find when I do, I go, oh, that's really nice. Damn it. I should have filmed that. That should be a tutorial. So, and then I'm like, and now I have to recreate it somehow. And like, if it doesn't turn out the same. So I try and film almost every time I paint, to be honest.
Oh, wow.
Because I'm so I have such a time limit, right? Like my husband works 3 days, during the quarantine, he's been doing 3 days a week and has given me 2 days during the week to film. So I have to get all my filming and editing done in that time. So I don't really have as much time to paint leisurely. So I figure if I'm going to paint, I might as well film it. When you have a little toddler running around, you don't get much me time anymore. So that me time turns into tutorials.
So being a YouTuber and being an artist, they seem like different skill sets. So have you had to learn a lot in terms of how to present yourself, how to, just the technical aspects?
Not as much. I think because I was a teacher before, I think most of that just translated more than being an artist because I never really saw myself as an artist. I think I was always a teacher first and taught art, if that makes sense. Yeah. And then the technical stuff, like even just like creating videos, I used to create videos all the time with my kindergarten kids. And, like that was something I always loved to do. And everyone likes to credit my husband for like, oh, he's the tech guy. He must be doing this for you. And I'm like, not really. Like, I got this on my own. Like, besides like getting me onto YouTube and explaining all the analytics to me, I pretty much did it on my own. And it just kind of came naturally. And it was just something I've always been interested in. But yeah.
So you do a lot of floral work. Do you have a favorite flower that you like to paint?
I think the peony. It's my favorite flower in general. And it was the first thing I learned how to paint too at the watercolor workshop I went to a few years ago. And they're my favorite flowers, which they're so hard to find here. I remember like, I keep telling my husband every spring, I'm like, can you just go buy me peonies? But like last year they didn't bloom and they were available for like a week here in grocery stores. Like we don't have many florists by us, but like they were available for a week and he missed it. I'm like, oh, I just want a peony. So, but yeah, like the weather was so bad they didn't grow, but I love painting them. I don't know. And they're kind of difficult and intricate with like the amount of petals, but there's just something about them. And because I was taught how to paint them first, I have this little obsession with them. And it's always my go-to flower. And I find they always do well too in tutorials. Like people like to paint them.
One of the things I find so relaxing about watercolors is just putting colors on a piece of paper. So it sounds like that was something you did kind of as art therapy.
Yeah.
What do you think it is about just getting colors down on a piece of paper?
It's not even just getting the colors down. If like the video I did on how watercolor helped with my anxiety, I explained just how I did a lot of wet on wet backgrounds. And I saw that on an Instagram post and I'm like, I got to try this. And you just lay down the water first and then you drop in the color and you just kind of watch it explode. It was just like this calming effect. And it was just like, I don't know, it just brings so much peace when I do like a wet on wet background, or, you know, you draw a petal with a light wash of like pink and then you drop more color in there and you just watch it blend. It's just, I don't know. It's magic to me. I don't know. And I think that's what I love about watercolor, rather than like I used to do acrylic a long time ago and that was my go-to. But then once I found watercolor, I was like, wow, this is a different kind of relaxing.
Yeah. I found that when I did acrylic, I felt very aggressive. Like yes, I'm going to get a lot of paint on this canvas. And then, you know, watercolors is just so much more peaceful.
And it's an easy cleanup too. That's one thing I love about it. Like when I used to do acrylic, it's just like, you have to bring the canvas out. You have to mix your paints. You know what I mean? You couldn't just like leave it or else it would dry and then it would harden. And I found with a little baby, you never know when you're going to have to go and tend to the kids. So you're like, you can leave your watercolor there and then come back. There's no worry about it drying and cracking and all that stuff. So it's an easy medium to just kind of, you know, throw on your desk and do it and come back when you need to. And it's chill.
So what surprises you about doing art or having a YouTube channel? Is there anything that's like been a real revelation for you?
Just that people want to watch it. I still don't understand like how I can get so many views on certain things. And I'm just like, there's people just sitting at home watching my face or my hands do something. It still doesn't click to me. Yeah. And I get so many amazing messages from people saying, you helped me through this and that. And I'm just like, how? Like, I'm just like, I am a regular, ridiculous, goofy, you know, person who makes tons of mistakes and people just like enjoy it, I guess. I don't know. That shocks me still. And like the numbers, you know, like I said, I remember when I got my first 100 followers on Instagram and now I'm up to over 100,000 subscribers on YouTube. And that still blows my mind.
Yeah. Well, and I think, you know, it's your willingness to be authentic, you know, mm-hmm. and I think people really relate to that. Like, you know, it's okay if you make a mistake. Truly, it's okay.
Yeah, sure. That's how you learn. You know, like it's funny because I feel like any adult will tell a child, like, it's okay if you make a mistake. That's how you learn. But they can't take that advice themselves unless they're told it, right? And then why do we expect ourselves to be so perfect? But with younger students, it's like, no, it's okay if you make a mistake. That's how you learn. It's like, tell yourself that too. Like you can be 65, 75 years old. Like there's still room to learn.
Yeah.
If you haven't been taught something or you haven't done something before, it's going to be new and you're going to be, you know, a beginner, and that's okay.
Now, what frustrates you about either watercolors or, you know, having a YouTube channel or any kind of art making?
I don't know what to do with it all, to be honest. I have so much artwork in my office and I'm like, what do I do with all this? So especially during like the quarantine, I've been trying to give away art, you know, and people are like, you should sell it. I'm like, no, like I do this for fun. You know, I'm making some sort of income off my videos. If I can give this stuff away and make someone's day, for sure. But I'm just like, it just keeps piling up and I don't know what to do.
Now, if you had one wish about watercolor or art or, you know, teaching people how to do it, if you had one wish, what would it be?
Just that everyone gets as much joy out of it as I do. I just hope it makes people happy and can help you brighten your day when you need it the most.
If someone wants to get started, like if someone's brand new and they want to get into watercolor, like how would you recommend they get started and what kind of tools do they need?
I'm a big believer in like cheap is great too. Like, I mean, I have some more expensive stuff, but I started out with, like I said, those Artist Loft, really cheap, cakey watercolor pans, and they're not great, but they did the job, and it helped me fall in love with it. I was using brushes from the dollar store, I used those for months and months. And so I do have a video on that, like just where to get started and like the supplies I use. And I also recommend, really cheap supplies. Like you want to kind of fall in love with the medium and the process rather than, you need to spend hundreds of dollars on paint. Now, if you want to take it up a notch, then you're going to need to get better supplies for sure. I always say my biggest thing is paper. Paper makes all the difference in your artwork.
Why is that? What's the difference?
It's the way the watercolor reacts on different papers is huge. Like, so I started off with Canson watercolor paper, which isn't awful, but it's not 100% cotton. The watercolor does not seep into the paper, which is what you want. It kind of sits on top. And then when it sits on top, the water will start drying at different rates. And that's when you get those kind of like cauliflower effects. And unless you're doing some sort of abstract work, which in that case, I kind of like those effects. A lot of people get really frustrated because the pigment doesn't spread out evenly. The water dries at different rates. And they're like, well, why doesn't mine look like yours? And I'm like, I'm telling you, it's your paper. So like Arches paper is my favorite. And the blends are just so even and the pigment shows up so much brighter on it. And it's just a huge difference. Now, if you have those really cheap watercolors that are like really cakey and chalky, that's also going to make a difference. So I would suggest like another step up. Like I like the Winsor Newton Cotman watercolors. And a lot of people, and I use those up until just recently. And people are like, why are you using student grade? I'm like, because I don't have money. Like, what do you think? I don't know why you guys think that I have all this money to try like 10 different watercolors. I'm like, no. And it wasn't until recently that a follower actually gifted me all of her professional watercolors. Otherwise, I wouldn't have had them. I'm like, I have a kid. I have, you know what I mean? Like I'm a stay-at-home mom. Like I'm making some income, but I could not justify a $15 per tube watercolor set. So someone gifted them to me and I was like, okay, so now I'm using those. But I think the Cotman ones, the student grade, are perfectly fine and they'll do the job, but paper will make the biggest difference. So if you end up enjoying watercolor with the cheaper supplies and you just want to get your work to look a bit better, definitely upgrade. But to start, just start with anything and just create and enjoy the process rather than what it looks like necessarily.
One of the things that I learned from your channel, among the many, is when you get your Arches pad, cut it up. Yeah. Because, I made the mistake of like using an entire sheet of Arches just to mess around. I'm like, oh, wait, this is expensive. Maybe I should cut up these pages.
Yep, definitely cut them up. I always cut them into quarters and that way you're just not wasting a whole page, but for sure. And even like the little scrap pieces, I think I had a video on that where it's like, make a bookmark.
Yeah.
Use it all. It's valuable paper.
What do you see as the difference between using tube watercolor and using just the pan watercolors?
So I hadn't used the pan watercolors until recently. People were asking me why I use tube. And I'm like, honestly, that's what I started with. It when I went to that first watercolor workshop, we ended up getting 5 tubes of Winsor Newton Cotman. So I just started building off of that. And that was the first like upgrade that I used. Like I said, I didn't have a bunch of money to go and try this and try that. So I just started building off that collection. And it wasn't until recently that I actually bought the Winsor Newton Cotman pans. And there's not a difference really if you lay them both down beside each other. But I did a whole comparison video on what I like better. The pans, I find it's harder to find refills for them. And so if you have this big watercolor pan of 45 different colors and you tend to use, let's say, 10 different colors the most, trying to find refills like that. You can't just walk into a Michael's or an art store, at least around here, and go buy a refill of a pan. So what I like about the tubes is you can arrange them in your palette the way you want to, put as much or as little, and, just buy a new tube when you run out. And I find putting them in your palette and letting them dry overnight makes them last a lot longer.
We are in the midst of lockdown right now, so people can't just head over to Michael's. Do you have any places online that you recommend? I mean, you can't put your hands on stuff, but at least you can buy it online.
Yeah. So in Canada, there's a store called Curry's Art Store, which I love. And that's where I actually used to go get all my high school supplies. So I'm a big fan of theirs. But I know in the States, they're Dick Blicks. Yeah, definitely recommend. Their prices are pretty good and they seem pretty stocked up, but I don't really know many others. I wouldn't recommend Michael's.
Okay.
Only because I think they're overpriced. I love walking into a Michael's. Don't get me wrong. I could spend hours in there, but definitely a lot of their stuff is very overpriced. So I suggest going for a Dick Blicks or a Curry's where it's just strictly art materials for painting or whatever.
So how would you recommend people find community online to kind of feel less alone in their art endeavors?
I'm a big fan of Instagram. And it's funny because a lot of my YouTube followers, my YouTube followers they started out as an older age group. It's funny. My demographic was 65 and up.
Oh my gosh.
Was my highest group, I swear. And I've had women of 85 years old saying, I just picked up watercolor. And I'm like, oh my God, I love you. That is so amazing. And it's just recently since the quarantine that it's starting to go to a younger audience. But a lot of my YouTube subscribers did not have Instagram. And I'm trying to say, you know what? It's such a great online community. You can post your work and everyone is so positive. I find a lot more people are kinder and positive on Instagram rather than YouTube. I've gotten some pretty nasty comments on some of my videos at times. And I'm like, who are you? Why? If you don't like a video, don't watch it. But the community on Instagram is just so kind and they're so uplifting. And I used to host watercolor prompts, monthly prompts or whatever. And people started talking to each other through them and they'd like each other's work and they'd message each other and they just started creating friendships through doing the same kind of artwork. And it was awesome. If my mom can be on Instagram and it took a little while to get her on there, sorry, Mom, but it just, if she can do it, you can do it. And it's such a great online community. Yeah. So supportive.
Thank you very, very much for taking the time to chat with me. I know that it's Saturday and I'm taking some of your leisure time away, so I really appreciate you taking the time.
Oh, no, this is my break time.
Okay, good.
This is a little break. I'm sorry, I got to work.
Big thanks to Emma for taking the time to chat, and I hope she didn't mind me fangirling her a little bit there. When you do your first Emma watercolor tutorial, and I know you will, tag me and Emma on social media. I know we'd both love to see your creativity. Find Emma on YouTube by searching Emma Lefebvre, and find her on Facebook and Instagram at EMJLEFEBVRE. I'll put it in the show notes. Her Etsy store is EMJ Watercolor Studio, and that's watercolor with a U. And don't forget to check out the show notes for a list of Emma's favorite nonprofits and the stories behind them. Just a reminder that you can find the podcast on Instagram at LoveWhatYouLovePod, on Twitter at WhatYouLovePod, and the website is lovewhatyoulovepod.com. You can find me on Twitter at Julie K. Rose and on Instagram at Julie K. Rose Author. Zeke Rodriguez-Thomas at MindJam Media provided amazing editing assistance. You can find Zeke at mindjammedia.com. Also, huge thanks to Emily White for the episode transcripts, which are available to patrons at patreon.com/lovewhatyoulovepod. Listen, be good to yourselves and be good to each other and love the hell out of whatever it is that you love. You need it, and we definitely need it. Thanks for listening. Let's hang out again soon.